Anicka, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's great to
How are
be
you?
here.
Great to have you.
I'm a little, how can I say, a little punch drunk from a combination of sleep deprivation, jet lag, but also really charged.
You said you just got back from a Zen Jedi training center in Hawaii.
Yes. So there's this Zen Buddhist monastery in the Kalihi Valley in Honolulu. I went there once before, a year and a half ago, and I went again this recent trip to train. And what they do is their philosophy is really, it's just so fascinating. And what drew me in, they train for anti-fragility. And what they mean by that is that, most people think about hope, especially in a time where the world seems to be in exponential crisis at every turn. And there's a lot of collective, universal anxiety around our shared future and our present. And so a conventional way to approach that is, oh, well, we've got to be hopeful. We've got to try to do certain things in terms of, trying to get the balance right or something. Whereas this training center, which was formed by a third or fourth Japanese Hawaiian martial arts master, Roshi is the Japanese word for a venerable old master. So Tenue Roshi formed this training center monastery, this dojo in 1972. But before that, he went and traveled back to Japan and found a very esteemed Roshi who comes from like a samurai lineage and asked him, will you come to Hawaii with me and build this training center? There's nothing like this in the West exists. And so it's very well known on the island of Oahu. They jokingly call it warrior training or Jedi training. You enter through the body. It's all body related. So they train you so rigorously through martial arts and then 3 sessions of Zazen meditation. And it's truly probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done because it's not just about these kind of compartmentalized, segmented schedules. The entire time you're there, everything is an opportunity to exercise discipline and to do everything with intention. And it's very strict with so many rules and rigors. The entire time you're just super stressed, scared, and frustrated and angry the whole time because you're getting scolded for doing everything wrong. You know, there's a correct way to do the dishes in this clockwise rotation. The faucet water should not make an obscene splashing sound. Walk very carefully along the galleys of the dojo. So the entire time you're just extremely wound up, but in that process, you're having this paradoxical struggle. Obviously, the ego and the self surfaces, and it's, gatekeeping the experience, and it's just really going full throttle and saying, no, how dare you speak to me like this? And the humiliation, the shame, the lack of dignity that you're experiencing on a regular basis. But then the whole point is that you are confronting that ego in the self and that you need to ventilate it. And there's no room for that. If you truly want to be not only become anti-fragile, but really become really attuned to the logic of the universe, then there is no self. There is no autonomous self. And you really have to just try to let go. And it really pushes you. But through the body do you enter. It's less sort of cognitive in that sense, you know? So it relies on a physical intelligence that you have to develop. And believe me, my physical intelligence is pretty low and pretty sad. So that's also part of the experience. I'm not an athletic person, didn't play sports, don't have this kind of training background. So I really got thrown into the deep end as someone who's just completely out of place in lots of ways. The only, I think, aspect is maybe, I have a 6-year meditation practice. So that was something that helped me, but I had no other edge, going into this place.
That's probably the biggest edge you could have, though, to have a
One would
practice.
think, one would think, but my training is actually more Tibetan Buddhist meditation and Vipassana. So the Zazen tradition and its formality. It's relatively new. I only learned it through the first time I went to train a year and a half ago. And it's so much about posture. You're not allowed to move. Your eyes are half open, looking about 2 to 3 feet ahead of you, and you must not make a sound. You must not move. There are consequences. A head meditation sensei or something would walk around and correct my posture, correct my body. And that's very intimidating.
They don't hit you with a stick though, do they?
Well, it's funny you should say that, and I don't want to trigger or alarm anyone, but in my experience, there was a meditation teacher who walked away. And by the way, she's 20 years younger than me, and is a med tech by day and like a master meditator at this monastery. And there's got this wooden sort of sword sort of prostrated up against her shoulder, and she's walking around inspecting all the meditators. And I was just like, oh my God. And sure enough, each time she corrected my posture, no one else's. You're just on a steady diet of humiliation, shame, degradation.
Sounds healthy.
It is because, I mean, like, why not confront all of that, right? Why not, why prolong and pretend and say, oh, this is so great, like in some spa-like environment, right? Where everything is just so comfortable. You're never going to ventilate your ego that way. You have to actually really, really kind of almost like so uncomfortable. And I've been told that plenty of people leave the program.
How long are the retreats?
So there's a training program that lasts 7 days. It's called Sesshin. And that's the real, in the way that Vipassana, 10-day silent meditation commitment. This Sesshin is a 7-day program. I've never done the 7 days. I've been told it's easier to do 7 days than 4 days because if you've ever tried to like do a fast or a diet, the first 3 days is the hardest because you're really trying to undo all the bad habits. That's kind of also like a kind of meta concept for this monastery is that they really kind of want to reorient you and reconfigure because we've been taught all these bad habits from birth and onto into adulthood. In order to do that, you have to kind of almost shock your system. I'm not condoning that things have to be so stringent, so extreme, but that's what I signed up for.
But when you say it was hard, and you've done 10-day Vipassana retreats, which are incredibly challenging.
Well, it's hard on a lot of levels because, for one thing, I don't know anything about martial arts. So we're doing kendo. I don't know if you've ever done kendo, but you have someone charging at you with like a giant bamboo sword, and you're thinking, I didn't sign up for this. I don't know what's going on, you know?
But you're trying to maintain your composure and be aware, and I assume this is part of the
You're
training
just
is to
trying to learn all this new vocabulary and lexicon and technique and you do warm-up exercises and if you get the coordination wrong you're scolded and I don't mean to whinge about it because that's not very zen. I thought I tried to give a little bit more of a raw account rather than oh yes of course it was just so enlightening so yeah that was really stressful and then also boxing and all these different this okyo this like Japanese chanting meditation just completely lost on what page the chanting is happening and you're on your knees kneeling which is always painful for me so it's just physically really uncomfortable but then after the morning zazen which is at 5:30 which is lasts about 45 minutes you have a really short quick breakfast and meal times are not relaxing it's not a reprieve from the discipline. If anything, it's you eat in, I don't know, 7 minutes flat, which is not friendly to my digestion. I don't know about you. But you can't be the last person eating because it looks like you're just sort of, you know.
hanging out, milking it.
Exactly. And there's judgment there. And the first person who finishes eating starts the collective dishwashing process. And you better get on that, because you're not looking very communal. And then after that, you do about 5 hours of outdoor field work, which is really hard manual labor.
Gardening or landscaping,
You're
what kind of stuff?
pulling weeds, you're getting really heavy river rocks and nearly slipping on the slimy algae coated rocks and nearly getting a concussion and thinking, am I going to die here? You're doing that and you are helping to harvest the very sacred Hawaiian plant, the kalo, which is a Hawaiian word for taro. And that's a very sacred plant for the Hawaiian epistemology because Hawaiians believe that they've actually originated from plants and that the kalo, the taro plant, is actually their older sibling. So they revere it with such sacred reverence. And I'm sitting there trying to harvest this. It's like 1,000 degrees, like in this very, very powerful Hawaiian sun. And I accidentally chisel into it with the,
You
and I'm
stabbed
thinking,
the brother?
yes, yes. And I'm just having an internal meltdown panic. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get kicked out. I'm never going to be allowed to come into Hawaii. What's going to happen? And the native Hawaiian monastic trainee, they have people living at the monastery. She was very, very kind and gentle about it. And I was horrified.
I would have been too. How long are the meditation sessions?
45 minutes long. So you have a morning meditation and then the evening. So you have two back-to-back Zazen sessions in the evening, one at 6 o'clock and one directly following after. I mean, actually, there's like three. So you have like a sitting, Zazen means sitting meditation. And then you have that for 45 minutes. And then you spring up, which is not guaranteed in case your legs aren't working because you're, they're not cooperating because your body's kind of falling apart at this point. And but then you have to spring up for a very brisk walking meditation, and you really have to keep the pace and the rhythm with everyone else in that line. And then you sit back down after about 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and then you go into the second session of Zazen, which is 45 minutes. There's no downtime.
Is there no eating after noon?
Oh no, it's not like Vipassana. There are three full meals. There are snacks in between if you care for it. But honestly, I usually kind of lose weight when I go there because you're just on your feet constantly, but also there's no time to eat.
You're busy.
Yeah,
An advanced practitioner would probably say that you want to approach everything with the same intention.
exactly.
Formal, informal, cooking,
Yeah,
eating, whatever.
there's no on or off switch. When you take that red pill.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a fully immersive, all-consuming program. And you have to commit. And they say that. They use very tactical words like be hard on yourself, commit. That's what they want to see. You don't have to master anything the first time, but they want to shape you and you have to acquiesce. And there are people who there's a line that and then they just kind of they snap, I think. That's what I'm told. And most of it comes from being scolded. People don't like being told that they're doing things wrong numerous times in this very stern tone, and they get extremely combative or they shut down.
So it's ego related.
It's all ego,
Yeah.
And so you see that. And so they have an extremely robust vetting system. They just won't let anyone in to the program because it would just be a revolving door of tears and people would just be really frustrated. It's not for everyone.
Sign me up. I'm in.
I'm going to make some introductions after
Would
this.
you? I'd love that.
Absolutely. This is such a special place. And after having spent a few days there, I thought I was miserable. Did not enjoy it. But then as soon as you leave, you are so euphoric. Everything is glistening in technicolor, and you appreciate everything about life. And then you think, normal life is a breeze after this. And it gives you this sort of protection, this anti-fragile fortitude, and this strength that you never knew that you had. It's just that your mind really limits what your body can do and what you're really capable of. So this is an attempt to change your neuroplasticity. but that can only come through the body.
I was about to ask you what the utility of it is in your life after doing something like that.
I mean, it's hard to quantify and encapsulate because it is so, I would say, quantum, you know? I mean, it's not for any one thing, but there's such practical benefits. You're just aware, hyper aware of everything that you're doing, that there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And just doing things with more intention and mindfulness, of course, but also striving for excellence, not taking the easy way out because it's too hard. So it really strengthens that muscle. I'm really pretty conditioned to work very hard as an artist in my waking artistic life, but everything else can get a little pear-shaped, you know? And it's about a totalizing presence and metabolizing reality in a way that you don't resist reality and avoid it and embellish it and just try to only satisfy yourself with a relative.
Thinking about a quote, I don't remember who said it, but they said that the way that you do anything is the way you do everything.
I mean, there's a reason why those aphorisms kind of land because there's a symmetry there, right? On a deeply existential level, cosmological level, but also just it makes me a better person, a better artist, a better friend, a better leader. It's very profound.
We often do that. You tend to have hierarchies of the things you think are important. As artists, you're thinking that's the art practice. This is the most important thing, but it's all one thing.
That makes me think about different kinds of states of consciousness. I think in like psychology, there's the kind of lantern consciousness of children, for example, which is more exploratory, it's more expansive, and it's about the experience and exploring, which I think is so vital for developing intelligence, as we're sort of searching and recognizing that, intelligence is not found from within, that it's actually created through participating, through the entanglements, through the interdependence and the interconnectedness of everything in the universe. Whereas humans have also evolved into a more spotlight consciousness, which is more focused and goal oriented and productive. It's like, oh, I need to focus on this and I need to meet these benchmarks in order to accomplish something that's a little more linear, right? We do ourselves a disservice if we're only just focusing on that one linear path. And when reality won't allow for that anyway, especially on a subatomic level, there are no boundaries or borders around
It reminds me of something Ajahn Sumedho. I don't know if you know who he is from the Thai forest tradition. He was a student of Ajahn Chah's,
it.
and he said, asking where consciousness is, it's like a fish asking where water is. Where is it? Where, it's everywhere.
That sounds very Taoist.
Yeah, he's really good. I spent some time up at a monastery in New Hampshire
Mm,
that is from that tradition. I get a sense with these monks, the absolute goal is freedom.
I can kind of relate to that. I feel like one of my goals in this life is to pay down my karmic debt. Maybe I'm just mercenary, but I don't want this next life to be as hard as this one.
Yeah, be a little, at least a little lighter, right?
Let's lighten that load, just a smidge. I've got a lot of work to do, you know?
I'm sure I have more.
No, doesn't sound like it.
I don't know.
Um,
It's hard because you carry this stuff for lifetimes and lifetimes, and people think, are we talking about reincarnation? What is that even? It's like you don't have to believe it or not. It's just energy moving around. There's nothing particularly mystical
yeah,
about it, right?
no, and I tend to be less a stickler on the dogmatic sort of end of this. I'm relatively new to this practice. It's only been about 6 years that I've been a student of Buddhist practices, and I'm barely dipping my toes, really. So I'm hardly an expert. I'm hardly very knowledgeable. My sister got me into this. We were brought up by my very, very Christian parents who were very devout. But my sister, she became a Buddhist about 20 years ago. She found herself living in India for quite a while. She had some health problems, chronic health problems as a young person, and was very drawn towards Ayurvedic healing practices. So she made the pilgrimage to India and spent many years there and found her way in Dharamsala and then met the Dalai Lama and really committed to this practice. I spent a couple of years in India and then relocated to Kathmandu, where she is I would say, a Buddhist nun
Wow.
in a monastery.
In the Tibetan tradition?
She has a Tibetan name. She speaks fluent Tibetan. She is committed to the retreat life.
Wow. So she's all in.
She's not out.
That's amazing. So she got you into meditation initially.
Well, she'd been trying to proselytize me for quite
Yeah.
a while. We are family after all,
Yeah.
She was not subtle about it. And I just remember thinking, look, intellectually, conceptually, beautiful, wonderful. But I'm just like, not now, Buddha. I have other things that I need to do, and I just wasn't ready for it. And it was actually during the pandemic, I was having these panic attacks. So she sent me these YouTube videos of a Rinpoche that suffered from panic attacks as a child. He's a master meditation who teaches all around the world, very, very well known.
Dongi?
Yangi, yes.
Yeah.
Do you know him?
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, I've read his books, or
Oh,
read one of his books at least. Yeah.
I mean, it's a little embarrassing, but we both met in Vancouver at a TED conference. We were both speaking. I mean, I know that sounds just ridiculous. The 21st century monk at a TED conference.
It's not, I think it's great. This is the way that people are coming into contact with these traditions, with these
Yeah,
techniques.
I mean, his TED talk was incredible. When I met him, I was weeping because he helped me so much in my rock bottom state during the pandemic when everything transformed and I practiced his YouTube meditations and I just thought this is the only thing that works. My practice as an artist, it's so close to a lot of these Buddhist philosophies and theories of entanglement and interdependence. And yet, I didn't have the spiritual subatomic strangeness to really kind of activate all of these fairly, now in retrospect, dry and just cerebral nuggets of knowledge or what have you. And then I realized this is not a holistic approach to knowledge or reality or existence and all of that. And what attracts me to Tibetan Buddhist philosophy is that it is the most engaged with modern science and principles. So I kind of took to it really well.
I could see that because whenever I see your work, I get a sense you're looking, questioning, really looking at the deeper nature of things, the deeper realities.
Well, I think it's trying to kind of address phenomena, but not as a point of inquiry. That's what science does. It can articulate the phenomena, but it can't teach you how to live it. And that's where I was in 2020. I understood the phenomena. I embraced it. I was inspired by it. I applied it, but I sure did not know how to live a life.
There's a vast difference between intellectual understanding and practical understanding, I think.
Yes, and practical implies that it's a lesser, immediate, kind of throwaway, disposable, minor, relational need. But I think of it as more like we have these conventions, like language and words and the categories of you and me and I and we, and none of that really exists. We're sort of trafficking in these abstractions. And oftentimes we get really caught up in the abstraction as a substitute for what things really are. So, in that sense, becoming a student of this philosophy has allowed me to learn and access these tools of unlocking these barriers to real totalizing thing in itself rather than trying to create this dualistic, analytical, representational relationship to the phenomena that resists that, that's kind of cannot be contained by that. It's just this like reorienting this hierarchy where we think that this cognition is the most valuable capital that we can cycle through. And it turns out it's not. It's actually taking you further away from what it means to become.
So your first meditation retreat was during 2020 as well?
So there were no Vipassana retreats to my knowledge in 2020, but I think I went in, oh gosh, I'm terrible with dates. I would say it was like 2023, sometime 2022, 2023.
How did you feel after you did your first 10-day silent retreat?
Oh my gosh. I did it in 29 palms in the desert. And that's that was like a one act comedy play as well. I can't separate the humor and the comedy from all of this because I'm so new to this and kind of really bad at it in lots of ways. And I just remember going there and it's hot. It's like August. The surface is cooking in the desert. And I'm just thinking, and I'm not a desert person. I'm like, what am I doing here? Okay. And I just remember thinking, like, okay, this is an opportunity to strip myself bare, all pretense, artifice, ornamentation. I'm just going to go in and just really try to channel that primordial energy. And I get there and there's orientation, I remember like this is LA, at the outskirts of LA, you have to keep in mind. And I see all of these chic women coming in with their Damascus chic meditation outfits. And I felt so betrayed. I was like, I didn't think we were doing that. Like, I came in with my schlubbiest, most modest, humble rags. It was essentially a fashion event, and I
Wow,
was,
I've never experienced that.
oh, yes.
It must be a California thing, I guess.
It's not a condemnation. It was just like a very humorous point of entry into my ego. The moment you get there, there's no time to waste. It's like, oh, Anicka, here's the first test. The entire experience was so cinematic, in between the meditation sessions, which are very long and painful physically, we would go and do laps around this open desert field and just these female bodies just kind of walking around in silence. And you just think, oh, you're in I don't know, hallucinatory Peter Weir film in the 70s, these meditating women silently ambling in the desert. I mean, it was like those visuals are just so powerful.
Have you done more since?
No, actually, I have not. I've been trying to get to Massachusetts.
That's a great one.
Yeah, yeah. Seems like you've done quite a few.
They call that the Vipassana Hilton because it's like a three-star hotel there. It's fancy.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew Massachusetts would just turn it up,
Oh yeah.
like just like,
Beautiful, nestled in the Berkshires. It was the first
yeah.
one, so it's kind of like the main, the
Oh,
flagship. I believe it was. Yeah, it was the first one that SN Cuenca established when he came to this country. So for people that don't know, we're talking about SN Cuenca retreats in the 10-day Vipassana tradition, which
yeah.
are typically they're found throughout the country, throughout the world, and they have centers everywhere. It's still in the Buddhist tradition, but it's meant to be open to anybody of any religious denomination, faith or not,
Yeah.
etc. And you're observing sensations in the body. You start with the breath. 3 days are called Anapana. You're sharpening your awareness, and then the subsequent 7 days are observing sensations throughout the body. So when you say, and I'm curious about the Zen retreat that you just came back from, because you described it as being very much seeking awareness through the framework of the body, which I thought Vipassana was kind of like that too, but it sounds like even more so in the Zen tradition.
I don't know about if I'm qualified to rank one or the other. I found Vipassana to be exquisitely painful on the body. I mean, I'd never sat so much in my entire life. It was I remember one experience, like I think it was after the first 3 days after you do the Anapana and then you get into the Vipassana. I was like, okay, here we go. Now we're really cooking and we're just gonna roll. And I was in so much pain to the point that I thought, do I raise my hand? I'm going to faint. I need a medic or something like that. And you just sort of push through this quantum tunnel of pain and psychological, the point where you're just shattering. And once you cross that threshold, you reach a, I don't know what they call it. I don't know. I feel very self-conscious saying, like, I don't know if it's nirvana. I don't know what it is, but it completely rearranged my relationship to pain, the body, time, space, continuum, all of it. There was no separation. And once the mind finally acquiesced, said, okay, there's no escaping this pain. And then something truly, truly cosmologically opens up and everything transforms. It's not to say that the pain didn't come back the next day or later on, but I crossed a threshold, some kind of portal. And I don't mean to use such mystical language or something, or, I mean, for those of you who are very allergic to that kind of characterization or that kind of fiction or something. But that's how it felt to me. We don't accuse physics of being romantic, and yet the language around it is the most romantic language we have, in the universe and on our planet for sure. So I don't think we need to dress it down too much. But I think that if you're already kind of have a suspicion or predisposition for dry material language, I guess I just let you down.
And there's no escaping it. You're suffering in that moment. Instead of the pain changing, you change your perspective on the pain. And it's very healthy. It's really, really good because
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it crushes the ego in the most useful way.
It does. And, I mean, I've had friends joke like, oh, you went to your torture camp, and like, and the way that we characterize because it's couched in fear, because it's couched to serve the ego and protect the ego, right? Just bolt those doors and windows in that ego room, right? And so, of course, you're going to kind of dismiss it or criticize it or indict it in some way, or just even the language is as playful as it is. There's a kind of a reputation for being so strict and harsh, but that language is really only there because it's out of fear and a lack of engagement. Presumably, you use that or you're attached to that language if you actually haven't benefited from what this practice can offer you. And I still kind of, as a kind of tourist, sometimes, use that kind of language of like, oh God, I gotta brace myself. I'm gonna go in, this and that. I have to own up to that because I'm still a novice and I'm still just really new to this. And I'm still clinging to that version of me that is afraid, that isn't used to this, that is in awe.
It's hard though, because as you said earlier, but we've been trained our whole lives in the wrong way. Everything you do is actually a kind of a training all the time. Every action you take is training. So
Especially in the West.
good or
You know,
bad habits are training.
well, we inherited a legacy that was passed on to us from, the European Enlightenment that really posits the individual, the autonomous self. The Enlightenment philosophers invented the category of the human. They invented this cosmological split between humans and nature and machines later. It created these different categories, this kind of siloing, this segregation. And I think that that's had some deleterious effects on our culture, our civilization. And now more than ever, we've really got to try to address these patterns, this commitment, this attachment to this fealty towards this way of life that doesn't serve us. And it's only causing destruction and pain with really no way to break through and transcend.
And there are tools, though, at our disposal.
Everything is becoming upended in that way, and that's what's so exciting. As challenging as this time is for all of us planetarily, it is the most exhilarating, fascinating time because we've got all of this ancient wisdom coupled with this really new technologies that we've never experienced before, that we've never even imagined before. And while there's high risk, I'm definitely not a techno optimist, but neither am I a techno pessimist. So the science will continue evolving its phenomena, whether we understand it or not, and whether we dismantle previous theories and whether we dismantle and disavow other beliefs. But that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my work, is just trying to unlock that conversation, that this is not about a monolithic power relation, the sort of authority and hierarchy of science, and where that exists and influences our civilization in the West in a way that I think is just not helpful for people sometimes.
Would you say that your work is about possibilities?
Not exclusively, but in the sense that we're all immersed in possibilities every moment, every time. There's no fixed point. There's no fixed outcome. There's just impermanence. And so you can think of that in a very optimistic way, that everything is a possibility because nothing gets to stay the same. Nothing gets to continue for much longer. But we become so attached to that continuity. We become so attached to this cadence of expectation. These Buddhist tools have finally, I've been taught to let go of that. And I think I took to it pretty well because I had an advantage as an artist. We work with uncertainty. And by now, it's a very familiar power that I feel like I know how to steer and activate and open up rather than clench down and become sort of rendered immobile or frozen because of uncertainty. It's not to say that I'm not constantly negotiating between certain sort of outcomes versus everything being the wild unknown at all times. But I think that I feel like I was fortunate and got a little bit of support in, just being a kind of practitioner in uncertainty.
You're surfing.
I had to learn how to surf in new and different new ways.
I suppose
Okay.
there's no surfing at the Zen centers.
There's no surfing.
I was gonna say
There's no
I'd be
recreation.
surprised. No.
I don't think samurais in feudal Japan were surfing, so we're definitely not surfing.
It's a Hawaiian tradition though, right? They had those
Of
longboards.
course, and
Yeah.
and Hawaiian culture and Hawaiian narratives are really, really part of the engine of this place. We all recognize and acknowledge that we're all guests in this place, and the history is so steeped and informs your experience there. But no, we didn't surf.
I think of you and I think of your work, and I'm just like, nobody's doing that. Nobody's working with pheromones, with plants, with microbes. It seems like you're completely expanding what a medium can be.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the only person working with any kind of one material.
Mhm.
I would encourage anyone, no artist or any one person can own bacteria. No one can own algae. No one can own any of this. And I actually am very excited to see other artists working and thinking through and relating with these planetary events. I definitely don't have any designation or territorial occupation in any of these vast systems. But I do think that when I became a exhibiting artist, I definitely didn't come across a lot of people who were exploring this vast ecosystem and foregrounding it. And just kind of submitting in a non-subjective way. My work isn't about me, and I try to stay out of it. And that's an evolution. I'm not saying it was always like that, but I try to really stay out of the way because I think that there are just channeling, if you will, that needs to take place and that artists really channel the alchemy. And I'm not really the owner of that.
How might you think of a piece? Does it start off with just an observation, an idea, a sketch? How might it start?
Research. That's kind of one of my strongest skill sets, I want to say. Some people draw really well. Some people, sculpt with their hands and just transform a piece of clay. My skills are a little more peculiar and maybe more tied to a 21st century kind of methodology. This is my way of practicing art through a philosophical materiality. And so I do a lot of research. I like to read a lot. I like to keep up, but then also have an enthusiasm for historical as well.
We met recently at a show you have up right now in Storm King called Message from the Mud.
Mhm.
There are a number of cylindrical pillars that are essentially little ecosystems in each one. Is that accurate?
Yes, they're actually called Winogradsky columns, and they were invented by I want to say, Ukrainian biochemist, Sergei Winogradsky. Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of tool for emergence of soil science, to study the terroir. It's these micro ecosystems of soil and microbes and algae and nutrient pond water. It's this kind of microcosm.
It's aesthetically beautiful, but it's also really interesting, and the piece is constantly changing because obviously it's a living thing. Next time I see the piece, it'll be a different piece, right? Go back in a day or even moment to moment.
Yeah, I mean, these collaborators, they don't really care about what we want in terms of like that kind of consistent form, consistent identification. It's doing its thing. We have to just sort of ride there on their terms.
I always joke that, not joke, but I always say that art is alive, but in this case, it literally is alive.
It is. It's very much alive. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I like to work in these sort of entanglements between these multiple spheres that we exist in, the biosphere, the technosphere, immune sphere, the financial sphere. There's so many, and again, relating or identifying with just this one kind of discipline or this one siloed lane, it just doesn't reflect how life works. So that's why I have a kind of interdisciplinary practice.
It's true that everything's bleeding into everything else. You're influenced by certain things. You're in a certain culture at a certain time in a certain place. What are you interested in reading? What's inspiration for you research wise?
Lately, I've been reading about consciousness because I'm working on an AI project, a very ambitious AI project, and I'm thinking a lot about machine consciousness. So I'm doing research around consciousness. I am reading a great book called The Blind Spot. And it's sort of about how modern science needs to take account into a more complex worldview through framing the human experience rather than this compartmentalized, this kind of pure cognitive. But where does the cognitive, where does that take place? How does it get developed? So that's a great book. Another great book for your audience, maybe. Sorry, let me give you the authors of The Blind Spot. This is written by Adam Frank, Evan Thompson, and Marcelo Gleiser. It was published, I think, last year. And then I love to tie in our earlier conversation about meditation practice and Buddhism. The Quantum and the Lotus is a really amazing book by Mathieu Ricard and Trinh Xuan Tuan. He's an astrophysicist who was actually born into a Buddhist practice. Oh, it's a phenomenal book. You would
I'll
love
read
it.
it.
And then the last book I would like to say is Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned by these two machine learning researchers, Kenneth Stanley and Joel Lehman. This book is It's had a huge influence on my approach to art and everything in between. And they just contend that objectives are oversaturated. That if you want to do something simple, almost basic, sure, you can apply methodologies for these objectives, but they have been researching natural evolution and trying to create a machine learning through natural evolution. So then they realized by studying natural evolution that evolution doesn't really work in this way where you create these stepping stones, kind of like we were talking about that spotlight consciousness. Well, if I do this and I do that, evolution is nonlinear and it doesn't appear legible. We evolved ears because sound existed. But how could we have forecasted that? And how could we have anticipated that? It like forces you to pay attention. And this is where I think meditation practices really help. You have to drop into being and not be so attached and clinging to these structures of knowledge and knowing. You need to go through a kind of divergent path to get to something really truly great evolutionarily, and you need a different way in a different kind of plasticity and approach, and I think artists are really good at that.
So I've just come back from the new museum and I saw your piece there, In Love with the World. Maybe you could describe the piece.
Sure, I call it a flying autonomous machine. And technically, it's a dirigible, but I call them aerobes. And they're these helium filled machines that are powered by AI, but they exist through a kind of artificial physical intelligence. So there are these sensors that are installed in the space and they communicate through high frequency radio waves, so that they don't bump into the walls or each other or other visitors or creatures in the space. And so that was really important to kind of foreground that conversation around artificial physical intelligence, spatial intelligence, and through a sensory entry point into the world. How do we teach these machines about the world? Well, why not teach them through their senses and not through your cognition?
It feels like you've created a new form of life.
I don't know about that. I'm working on an artificial organism.
What is it going to be?
I can't really talk about it right now. It's in the very nascent stages, but I wouldn't purport to say that the goal for me or the objective, which I'm trying not to have any pointed objective in that sense, I wouldn't say the objective is to create an artificial life. I'm interested in creating a feeling machine.
I listened to a podcast recently with the philosopher Nick Bostrom. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
I sure am.
You know who he is. Yes, yes. I don't know if you have positive or negative.
Super intelligence.
Yes,
Yes.
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 And he was talking about the way that we treat these new life forms is potentially very important. And I think that's true that you sort of think, oh, it's just it's just a robot, whatever. But we're kind of already at the point in which they're not tools anymore, they're agents. How we interact with them is pretty critical, I think.
Well, that's part of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to disrupt this hierarchy that we have, that humans are separate from machines, separate from nature, and that it creates this very friction-based relationship to machines because we see ourselves outside of them. And I'm trying to really encourage a different way to relate to machines as kinship, as companions, as peers, not necessarily a pet or something that would just service you. So I'm interested in exploring new paradigms for machines and AI where it really centers on the being paradigm of machines, where it simply exists and it's not here to fold our laundry and deliver our pizzas and measure our heart rates necessarily, that it's simply coexisting with us and that we hopefully can reorient and rethink and have a different kind of relational intimacy with machines.
In my most AI utopianist moments, I think that it could really help us to get to the next level of evolution, to become our better selves, to become more infused with patience and love and so forth if we're open to that.
Well, I'm kind of glad you said that because I kind of tend to agree, but sometimes when I hear myself, I think, am I sounding techno-optimist here? But I mean, beyond those labels, why shouldn't we try to look at our better nature? It's always there. I mean, according to Buddhist philosophy, everybody has their Buddha nature right there at all times. And we choose to ignore it. We choose to cover it up. We choose to shield it. Why not have that attitude or that kind of generosity and tenderness towards how we can have these more holistic relationships to machines? We're not going to unplug the data centers. We just aren't. So we need to find a way to not only coexist with them, but also have shared goals. We're not walking away. And right now, there seems to be such an extreme polarity of this kind of threat because of the kinds of machines that we're trying to develop that aren't really aligning our goals.
What do you think it is? Is it the ego?
It's profit.
They don't understand what they're doing, I think, on a fundamental level.
I think that there's just such an absolute hysteria that I don't think a lot of rational thinking is going around. I don't think that there's enough discursive engagement, but also the asymmetry of the balance of power. I mean, I don't think Yanis Varoufakis is wrong in labeling our time as living in a techno-feudal state. And so the kind of disparity is just so vast. And when you have that kind of asymmetry, there's so much abuse of power, so much misunderstanding, and so much manipulation and fear because the rest of us, and I'm talking the 99% of us, who among us have any agency? We don't have access to the means of production, the means of distribution. I don't have a data center in my backyard. I don't have easy access to compute power, so all the resources are really, really protected for the very, very few. So that kind of imbalance and that kind of disparity in that power relation, that's really the crux. It's an economic problem. It's a problem of distribution. It's a problem of not just a crisis of imagination, but it's a crisis of resource distribution. And that's what we're seeing across every other kind of matrix that we're living.
There's more and more wealth being generated all the time. There's more sophistication of production of both food and resources. So really, there's enough for everybody if the distribution was more equal. And perhaps these various technologies, back to my optimist leanings, I think that there is a possibility for a greater understanding of the mechanics of the distribution that would make it more equal. And the thing is it's just not going to work out for anybody if it continues in such a lopsided way.
I mean, a few people are going to benefit, and then they're going to go off planet, and then they're probably going to, get radiation poisoning, get cancer in 6 months before they arrive on Mars. So I don't know,
What do they think? How do they think it's going to work out for them? Is that the plan?
It seems to be.
It's so crazy. I wanted to ask you briefly. I read an interview with you, I think you did back maybe in 2017 or 18, about your experience going to El Bulli. I was fascinated. It's closed not long after that, right?
That was the year it closed, 2011.
Oh, it was 2011.
But I'll never forget
How
2011,
could you
the
forget?
year El Bulli closed.
So for people that don't know, El Bulli was like an experimental, it was the first restaurant that started.
The temple of molecular gastronomy.
So what was the experience like? You
Uh,
described it as being quite intense.
I mean, it's still fresh. It lives within me. It's still so fresh. I don't think I'll ever really fully metabolize that experience or that meal. It created an entire cosmology, an entire materials and properties, worlds for me as an artist. What was it like? It was very gothic, but in that Louis Buñuel kind of way, the Spanish filmmaker.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the restaurant itself looks like a Buñuel film set. It's really warm and sensual as a contrast to this high modernist cuisine and this like very scientific alchemical ideology. You walk in and you just see these dignitaries and like, I mean, everybody looks like they could be a high level spy or a diplomat or some kind of mysterious science fiction writer or something. But maybe that was just me attributing these kinds of backstories to everyone there, because to me, this was the ultimate merging, this fusing of all these different art forms, cinematic, literary, but also like a perfumer would experience it, the layers and layers of the molecules that were happening in this experience. And then also the prelude. You have to go and stay in this tourist town, Rosés, where the restaurant is right on the Costa Brava. There's the illustrious history that, artists used to come frequent this place before it became the Temple of Molecular Gastronomy. Marcel Duchamp used to go dine there. And certainly Ferran Adria, the executive chef, he was known as the kind of mad scientist there. He loves artists. He's really inspired by artists because he's such a really unique artist himself. And I had this brilliant honor to be able to meet him years later, right before the pandemic. Meeting him was just really special.
Was this also in Spain?
So we went to the former site, which he was at the time, he wanted to transform the restaurant into a museum for creativity. And he was inviting artists to do these permanent site specific installations. So I was invited. We had lunch with Ferran. And then he, at one point, kind of shyly asked if he could use an image from one of my art installations, from the Guggenheim installation, with the trans species carpenter ants, and asked if he could use that image for the cover of a book that they were developing. And the book was titled Conocimiento, which means knowledge in Spanish. I just thought, okay, I can die now. My hero is in conversation with me. Somehow my work is resonating, and here it's on the cover of their book. And they've been publishing very steadily, even after the restaurant closed in 2011. So they've been creating these like incredible archives and library of so much scholarship around cuisine. And it's really fascinating to me. Anyway, so that whole episode and traversing these different many years, it's just so sacred to me. I just really cherish it.
Sounds like something that fit into your work as well.
I mean, it just created like an entire rubric.
Did it kind of open up in the way you saw what's possible in terms of textures, in terms of on a sensory level, right?
Yeah, alchemical, sensory, haptic, olfactive, ocular. I mean, I have this category genre that I like to call metabolic art. Art that you have to ingest in order to experience. So smell works like that, right? The odor molecules have to go enter your body, your pores, and that's how the artwork gets activated. You have to experience it. You can't have a passive, distanced, disinterested experience. You have to be inoculated. And it's a great metaphor of how art can function as well, inoculation. But with this kind of cuisine, it has to take on this form. It has to look good. It has to taste good. And then you have to digest it, and it has to pass through your body. So it's this very totalizing experience and art form. And I've been wanting to make a book about metabolic art for a while.
I just love the idea of having all these textures, having all these qualities, and every sense is activated.
It's really challenging to do, but that's why I revere this so much and why the experience really just enchanted me. It inspired me in a way that just it created a worldview that I've never really been able to shake, nor do I want to.
Is there anything that is comparable? What is there a restaurant that you would?
I think there are so many great restaurants that are doing incredible trailblazing things, but nothing like what El Bulli did. And the timing was so critical. He really started transitioning from a traditional Spanish restaurant. Its kind of origin story in this late 60s, where Duchamp would dine. And he really started to transition and transform in the late 80s. So this is like a 40-year lineage and transformation, and to kind of really crystallize it and master it at the height. 2011 is like nothing like that had ever been done before. He changed our entire cosmology, food and dining, that experience, all of it. I remember when I went to go visit the studio in Barcelona, the El Bulli studio, with all these archives, and they had these books that were diving into the origins of cuisine. And that really inspired me, which you may have experienced for the Storm King reception, where I was thinking a lot about prehistoric food, culture, the artistic practice, religious integration of it, because it wasn't separate from anything. Art wasn't separate from the spiritual, food wasn't separate from the spiritual, the land, the sea wasn't separate, much like a lot of indigenous epistemologies. And I was thinking about that when I visited their studio, just thinking about the very early evolutionary, what was this genealogy, this thing. And so I would ask an archaeologist friend of mine, like, did they have restaurants in prehistoric times? And he said, no, that wouldn't have been a thing. But there was definitely food involved in rituals and temples. So I said, I can work with that.
That's actually how we met because my friend Leah Guadagnoli and you collaborated on the feast.
Yeah, that I'm still tasting that focaccia. It's still lingering. Shout out to Leah.
Yeah, shout out to Leah. I could see how much consideration there was on your
uh,
part of what food can do, how it can activate.
well, she's a genius. I
She
think
truly is.
she understood the assignment and transformed it and took it to a place where it's shape shifted. So
Yeah.
kudos to her and her team, and also the Kara Chan people who introduced me and connected me with Leah as well. They're brilliant. They're doing really interesting things as well.
What are some restaurants you'd recommend in New York?
Oh my gosh. I'm so bad at this. I know food. I love food. I obsess about food. But restaurants, wow, okay. So my neurons aren't firing so easily this afternoon. It's so funny. I used to love this restaurant, and it used to be this cult institution in New York. Those who know. Do you remember that restaurant, Suen, the macrobiotic
No.
Japanese inflected restaurant? There was a location in Soho. They had a location in the West Village, I think like West 12th or West 13th Street. And it was macrobiotic, clean food, very humble, simple. It was kind of very Japanese based, but it was also like a very cool scene. I'm gonna be honest. You'd see all the celebrities, Chloe Sevigny or Nicole Kidman or something eating there with all the cool downtown kids, all the artists, the musicians, and it was such a beautiful, rich little time capsule. And I love those restaurants. And it was the place where reasonably priced, and it was very socialist in its appeal. And everybody would go there. And these places used to exist in New York. I came to the city in 1997, and there used to be these places in the city where it was just this really fascinating creative hubs outside of these sort of designated market hubs. Oh, this is where we do our gallery work, or this is where we do our wares or something. There used to be these places in New York that really served as these environments that were designed to activate all of this cultural exuberance.
I wonder if the way that rents have gotten so ridiculous have really made it difficult for restaurants as well.
Yeah, it's become a lot more stratified, and New York City's become deeply suburban in the last 15 years.
Where did you move from?
From London. I lived there for 5 years. Before that, LA.
So you grew up in LA,
No, I grew up in Orange County, Florida, Alabama. Those were the primary zones.
but now you're a New Yorker.
Ah, I mean, it's impossible to extricate myself from whatever New Yorker means to people. I think New Yorkers become very New Yorker outside of New York. Here, we're all just varying gradients of New York legibility. But outside of New York, that's where things get, they kick into overdrive in this kind of instinct. And I try to be very mindful of it because I've been criticized years ago. It's like, why don't you dial down that New York energy? If you're not there, we don't appreciate it. Trying to be mindful of that.
Well, it's true. It's such an intense place.
It's not for everyone.
It's never for everybody. It can be a tough place. You have to figure out a way to navigate being here. And I think it took me about 5 years just on a
Took
physiological level, just live in a way that it wasn't just like completely anxious. I mean, the energy is so intense. You can feed into that. It's wonderful creative energy, but at the same time, it can be difficult.
There's a lot of energy that I don't necessarily want to be in proximity to, if I'm honest. I think that one has to develop strategies of how to navigate that because you can't escape it, even if it's energy that you don't necessarily align with, right? Like a kind of energy around greed and an energy around self-promotion and all of these things, that people come here to try to leverage.
I always think about the fact that consciousness is so permeable.
Everything in life is about managing energy and protecting energy and steering energy. So a place like this has a lot of kind of compression.
If you were going to a museum, what would you gravitate towards? Like at the Met, for example.
I love seeing the early, ancient, pre-civilization art, but I also really love Hudson Valley School paintings, a lot of old world art that you wouldn't really think that I would, but I do. And I like things that are just less polished or had a different function and also a different organization around it.
Well, Anicka, I could talk to you all day, but I want to be sensitive to your time, so I should ask, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
No, I mean, this has been really interesting. I hope I didn't speak too slowly. I am, I think, a little cognitively challenged this afternoon.
No, not at all, not at all. You did great. It's been a real privilege. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to hearing the other episodes in your podcast.